Hello, everyone. Welcome to You in Sports podcast. Once a sports person, always is a sports person. In a part of our podcast series, we are basically going through quite a few journeys. And today, we are very fortunate to have Anthony Joseph with us. And we are going to tap on his journey, his experience, how it unfolded through the sports and everything, or everything about Anthony. We call Anthony AJ. So throughout this podcast, we will refer him as AJ. And let me introduce you to Anthony Joseph, AJ.
Yeah,
Hi, AJ.
how's it going, man? Good to
Yeah,
good to
it's
be
going
on
good,
today.
man. It's going good. And really, thank you. Thank you for coming on our podcast. Uh, so, AJ, we through this podcast, we just want to unfold the stories, and stories tell us so many things, right? It's a every journey is a different journey, but then it is experience, and we really wanted to tap on those experiences and unfold those experiences in front of our audiences. So there are youth who can learn from those journeys and the advantages which they can take. Certainly, our seniors they make a mistakes and we learn from their mistakes and not to make those mistakes, or they did something good in their journeys, and then we can make use of those journeys, those experiences, and make it to our benefit. So we really want that these journeys needs to be unfolded through You in Sports podcast, and that's the simple mission which we have behind this podcast. So once again, thank you, AJ, and
Yeah,
let's get started. So, AJ, before I tell anything, maybe you want to brief our audience about you, and then we can take you a journey from your childhood.
yeah, absolutely, man. So, a little bit about background about me. My name's AJ Moriel. Grew up down here in Nashville, Tennessee. Little smaller town called Franklin. It's a suburb of Nashville. When I was growing up, played soccer. Interesting story to how I kind of pivoted to football, but I'm sure we'll get into that later. American football, sorry.
American
Uh,
football, yes.
yeah. So played a year in middle school, played four in high school, and had the kind of drive and passion to keep it going into adult life and try to make a career out of it. So um, went to university at Mississippi State, which is a state school here in the U.S. Was really fortunate enough to be able to work in the recruiting department while I was in school, which was an experience like that I wouldn't trade for anything. And while I was there, started a company, ended up having a guy that I was working with at the time that was working on another company, kind of merged together, and we launched a football software company in late 2020 that did pretty well, and that's kind of what I've been doing the last couple of years on top of coaching high school football here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Probably rambled a little bit too long for that, but yeah.
No, no. So let's get started from your journey, how it started, you being a kid, and then what was a real inspiration uh, before starting any sports. Means obviously, as a kid, you start as a hobby, just tried so many things. But what was really inspiration when you started going more serious?
Yeah, for sure. So, growing up, my parents were basically like, you have to do something, whether it be, chess club, play guitar, be in plays, whatever, play a sport. So I wanted to play soccer, and that was my sport from when I was like 6 or 7, all the way up until 8th grade. I love soccer. It's still one of my favorite sports to watch. Um, and then I kind of made the pivot to American football. So a story about that, I was in 7th grade. It was like springtime. And I was sitting around the lunch table with all my little buddies. Um, and we thought it would be hilarious to try out for the middle school football team. Like that was like the big like dare. So we did it and then made the team. Don't know how, it was terrible. So that kind of kicked things off. So played middle school football for a year. Again, was not very good. I was really tall at the time and really skinny. So I was playing defensive end. Now I do not look like a defensive end. I'm like, I don't have the body type for that, but that's what I was playing. And I played receiver too, which was a weird combo. Um, we were terrible that year. I think we won 2 games, but yeah, I knew that like from there I kind of wanted to keep playing. And then started playing in high school, which is where I really kind of fell in love with it.
But how that transition happened from soccer to American football? Because two different combinations, right? Two different
Yeah.
types of plays, and then is it like friends, or it is just that you started liking? Because I was before I shifted to USA, I was not aware about American football, or I think it's NFL also. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So how really that transition happened? Because you were playing soccer,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's American football.
Yeah, so like I had watched football like with my dad and my brother growing up. So I knew the rules of the game and kind of like how it worked, but I didn't know the intricacies of it. And I sure didn't know how to play it. I knew how to catch a ball and that was about it. Uh so we had tryouts in like July and in Tennessee it gets super hot. But my dad would take me out and like we had a park that was next to our house and like we downloaded this like PDF file of like routes to run. And he would like be like, all right, do this. So run this route, catch this
Oh
ball.
man,
I'm like,
so
all
it's
right,
your dad.
dad.
It's your dad who really instilled that in you. That let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So my dad was really helpful with getting me acclimated and then um tried out. I think they were just taking anybody that year. So made the team and kind of learned a lot from my middle school coaches as far as how the game worked because it was very different than soccer. Soccer, you're always moving, you're always running. It's
Yeah,
90 minutes of just endurance, right? Football, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's an easier sport in the sense that it's 10 seconds, you get a break for a minute. 10 seconds, you get a break for a minute. 10 seconds, it's so on and
that
so
is
forth.
that is the first thing which I noticed when I started watching NFL, and the craze around that first week of what is that Super Bowl, right? And
Yeah.
then I was obviously I was kind of seeing that okay, soccer is very intensive, and then the first thing which I noticed is American football is where is the food being used. I
Mhm.
was I was
Yeah.
really
Like
looking at, because
super.
I was coming from that mindset that soccer, so always you are using your legs, but here American football, I was, and I'm so noise at that time. So but yes, again coming back to you, so you started, and you got a good coaches, but then around that time because it's a journey which really started when you are in the middle school, right? And then kids really start when they are 6 or 7. So how
Yeah.
that progress happened? Because then you need to do quite a few catch up.
Right. Yeah, I was super behind and I learned that really quick. Um so basically and this was still in middle school. This was before high school. So in middle school we had our first like full pad practice. So you put the helmet on, the shoulder pads, the knee pads, all that good stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really heavy. um and the first drill that we did, you can't do it anymore. It's banned in most states, but everybody like gets in this big circle and you put one person in the middle and a guy just has to come and run and hit you. And I was freaked out.
Yes,
So
that's true.
um
I saw quite a few practices in
yeah,
my previous
I
year.
uh I
Uh,
was in the middle of the circle and I got hit really hard and I was like, wow, I definitely am behind on this because that really hurt. And I just watched this other guy do it and he bounced up and I'm sitting on the ground like, what just happened?
man, yeah, and then so you started from the middle school, and then eventually high school must have happened. So you got selected in a school team.
Yeah, so my transition was pretty seamless. I went to a middle school that fed directly into the high school that I was going to play at. So the springtime of my eighth grade year, I started working out at the high school with everybody else that was coming in as a freshman. And that kind of kicked off high school. Really grateful for that kind of acclimation period because high school ball and middle school ball are very different in terms of just speed. Everybody's way stronger. You're more mature physically. So yeah, that was kind of the springboard for that at least.
But then that would be a different experience because getting selected in a school team and then you must have become a celebrity now.
Oh yeah. I I didn't think I was gonna stick it. But I was a 6'2" kid. I haven't grown since. I was 6'2" when I was 13. I'm still 6'2" now and I'm 25. So they were like, hey, he's tall. We can do something there. So it wasn't because I was super athletic. It wasn't because I was very good. They were like, tall guy, let's go.
Let's go, let's go. uh, and then uh, how is really financially, because it is expensive game, right? The
Yeah.
coaching, then I think you must be going in academies as well apart from the school team and all that. So how was that financially? It's like okay, or there were challenges which you faced?
Yeah, so in the area that I was in, and really in a lot of areas in Tennessee as well, um, a lot of the funding came from fundraising. So I never had to, like, my parents never had to, or I never had to like write a check to play or buy my own helmet or anything like that. Cause I mean, that's a $400 helmet, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we did a lot of fundraising though, which meant, you were 13, 14, 15 and going door to door and selling, gift cards and chocolate bars and, God knows what in order to kind of, uh, raise funds in order to be able to play.
That must be a different experience, that now
Yeah,
you are playing but then you are or you or your team is trying to raise the funds for
right,
your game, right?
right.
And was there any help from the school or city or state from that perspective?
Yeah, we would get a little bit of money from the school directly, but primarily we were had to fundraise to kind of play the game, which was kind of something, later on in life I didn't realize was so difficult. Getting people to fundraise because your budget is completely determined on what you bring in, whether it's through ticket sales or through going out and selling cards, like I said. So we didn't get a ton of money from the schools or anything, but we sure did raise a lot.
Yeah, but again, because racing is not easy, right? You need to
No,
go out and then you need to compromise on your practice or something. uh,
right.
and it certainly it is a good experience because then it is going out, but then it is still a deviation from what you are supposed to do and then what you are doing.
Right. And it was something at the time I don't think I was like grateful for the experience for. Because like it's middle of July, I'm 13, 14 years old at this point. The last thing I want to do is go door to door and, talk to grown-ups and have them buy stuff from me. But it's a translatable skill. So I mean all I do now is talk to people and try to get them to buy stuff.
Then I
So
I know that, I know that.
yeah,
When we met at Summit, right? Uh,
right.
you were the happy going person everywhere, and it
Yeah.
was it was a good experience. So, and
Yeah.
that's how we met. uh,
Right.
yeah. Uh, uh, but then, okay. So, how about then the practice and injury management? Because I think those are important things before or after or during the normal day-to-day activities, right? So
Yeah.
how really you manage that? What was the awareness which you got? Was there like a coaches was kind of telling you guys, and these are the to do, not do, or maybe your friends, you made a circle, and then that's because most of the things which I learned, my friends really played a very important role in that. So how was that for you?
Yeah, as far as practicing went, and like kind of the safety behind it, that was kind of all on our coaches, and they did a really good job at kind of load management, so to speak. In terms of like, hey, if you go really hard one day, like we're not going to go hard for 2 or 3 days after that, especially during the season. But a lot of kind of the injury prevention came through like weight training. And we had a really good strength coach at the time when I was in high school, or two really good strength coaches when I was in high school that um, would kind of set up workout plans so that, you know, your the ligaments that were active in the sport, you know, you're strengthening them rather than, you know, hoping that they don't tear or you get beat up.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sports and injury, those goes hands in hands. It's totally
Yeah.
around the management, how everybody understands their body, right? So
Yeah.
how you
And
inform.
on the side, you know, it's, you know, constant icing, constant, you know, making sure you're not overdoing it, you know, being aware of, you know, how you're feeling at the time, making sure you're wearing a brace, so on and so forth, you know, if you get to that point. Because the guys that you know, tough everything out, you know, that's awesome, but you know, there is a life after football too. So you
Exactly,
don't want
exactly.
to, you know, and I'm guilty of I mean, my senior year I played on um a jacked up like MC joint for a little while. I still feel it now, but it was worth it.
Not so. But then, how about a stress management? Means before playing important games, right? Because everybody
Yeah.
faces stress, and then
Are you saying like kind of managing like emotions kind of coming into games
exactly,
or just
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For me, I would definitely get super nervous. We played in front of some pretty bigger crowds, like, you know, anywhere from 1,000 to I think our biggest game we had 9,000 people at.
Wow,
It was
that's
stressful.
that.
We were pretty good too. So there was a lot of expectation, a lot of people talking about it, you know, locally. And I would I wasn't super great at like managing those nerves early on. I would get really jittery. But what I did learn kind of just over time was just, you know, controlling breathing, you know, believing in kind of what you've done the whole week preparing for this, and, you know, just executing the game like you have the practices for, you know, 4 days prior.
Yeah. So backing up that we follow the process, right? That
Yeah,
is that's
yeah,
what we say.
exactly.
It's a common term, like follow the process.
Right, exactly. And that was just some, and you just kind of had to trust. Football is a great sport, I think, for team building, because, you know, there's 11 guys on the field, and, you know, if one doesn't do their job, then the whole thing's screwed up. So really just, you know, as far as managing nerves go, just, you know, believing in the people around you that, you know, you're all going to elevate each other and, you know, get the goal done that you want to get done, whether it
Right,
be the
right.
player or in the game or whatever it might be.
How to be a good team member, right?
Right. 100%.
And then, so during this thing, was there any movie or any particular player who was really inspiration for you, or maybe set of players?
That's a tough one. So like growing up, like I was like I loved watching receivers. So I liked like Calvin Johnson. He played for the Detroit Lions at the time. I had nothing that he had. He was like 6'4". He ran really fast. He was really strong. But I like the way that he approached everything. I think the cliche answers like Tom Brady. Um, Guy that just like knew how to win, was like a great teammate, went about things the right way. Um, but, you know, I also wasn't somebody that like necessarily like looked up to professional athletes either. I kind of just like watching them play. But I think there's lessons you can learn through watching them play as well, you know?
Yeah. And then, how was the friend circle around you? It's like same friends with whom you used to play, and then it's like
Yeah.
or it's two different sets.
Yeah, so honestly, my high school teammates were my best friends. You know, we did everything together. We were at the school at 5 a.m. working out. We were staying after practice, doing whatever. We were going out to dinner. You know, weekends we're going to each other's houses. We're going bowling or whatever it might be. So yeah, I I had friends outside of football, but not a lot. Like those were kind of like my guys. And honestly, to this day, I still stay in touch. There we go.
That's
With almost all of them. My best friend of, you know, 10 years. We talk every single day. We played, you know, all 4 years of high school football together. So that was probably my favorite part about it, was just like the memories, the laughs that you kind of have, the experiences that you guys go through together as a team.
and I second to that. I think those are very precious memories, very precious bonds which we
Yeah.
have, and I think it stays throughout life.
Yeah.
But you want to take this as an opportunity and want to say anything to your friends that you haven't said yet, and then let's say it out.
I shout out the boys. They know how it is. Always going to be grateful for those times. I mean, every time that we see each other, it's somehow, some way you end up talking about some story, whether it was playing or practice or just hanging out and doing nothing together. Um, but some of the best times of my life for sure.
Yeah, stay blessed, man. Stay
Yeah.
blessed. Uh, so then this is about high school, and then what happened once you went to the university and then continued playing there?
Yeah.
How the lateral transition happened?
So yeah, so I again, like, we were a pretty good team at the time, so I really didn't get to like start until I was a senior. And my senior year was my favorite year of football ever. Before that, I liked it. I didn't love it. I like being around. I like love being around the guys. I liked the sport, but I had no plans of doing anything after. Then we had a coaching change. And I had a like really good coaching staff around me that like really inspired me and really kind of brought out the most love that I've ever had for the game. So after our last game, I was crying a lot. uh I took it pretty hard, which in hindsight I'm like, all right, dude, you lost the game, whatever. But I knew that was the last time I was ever going to play. Wasn't good enough to go play at the next level. I knew that. I had no aspiration of playing at the next level. But I had talked with my coaches, in kind of December of my senior year about like, hey, what can I do to kind of stick around?
Mhm.
Uh, and one of my coaches at the time had said, hey, if you go to a bigger school like in the South, they're always looking for help, whether it's in the recruiting office doing whatever, if it's on the field running drills, there's ways that you can stay involved. So when I got accepted to Mississippi State, which was not very difficult, by the way, um, state school in Mississippi, you don't have to be a genius to get in. But it got into school and immediately was like, okay, have to get in. So I was really fortunate. My freshman year, my first semester there, I kind of was just a student. I was just going through the motions of things. I was really missing football. I was going to the games, but I was just watching. And I was like, just kind of itching to get back involved in some way. And we had a coaching change at Mississippi State. Dan Mullen, he went to Florida. And Joe Moorhead, he came in. He was the offensive coordinator at Penn State. He came to Mississippi State as the head coach. Small world. My cousin, he played for Joe Moorhead when he was coaching at UConn in Connecticut. And I was talking to him, and he made a connection to another guy that on staff. And I went in, was like, hey, look, I want to work in football. I don't know what I want to do. I'll
I,
fold
I
in. I
I
don't
just
care.
want to stick around.
Yeah, I just want to be here, guys. And I was lucky enough to kind of land a spot there, working for free originally. Um, and that was the spring semester of my freshman year. And that kind of kicked everything off to, where I am now per se.
No, and I think it's amazing. Means, always we see the players up front because they are the face, right? But there are so many things which goes behind the scene. The
Right.
coaches, support staffs, and their continuous efforts for making their life much more easier so that they can be in a better shape emotionally, physically, and whatever that. So, uh, so definitely, I think hats off to all the coaches, all the support staff, the kind of role which they play. Uh, but again, so that's where you really changed the role, and
Oh
you
yeah.
started uh, becoming a coach.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a really cool transition. So, that semester, I was doing, very, very boring work. I was like folding envelopes. I was, bringing guys coffee and and whatever it might have been. But everything kind of shifted that summer. I got a call from a guy. His name's Matt Wilson. He had basically said like, "Hey, I'm coming in. I'm going to head up the recruiting and personnel department. Um, and we'd love to have you come in and watch players, evaluate talent, and help us with the recruiting cycle, which that at the time I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I get to be like a scout. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that was kind of my deep dive into it, and really kind of bought into what they were teaching me about, watching for what makes a player good,
mhm,
so to speak, and what qualifies them to play at, the level that we were playing at. So yeah, that was kind of my big break, so to speak. Was working in it was an internship at the time. And I was watching thousands of high school players every day, and writing evaluation, sending them up to our coaches for further evaluation in order to basically determine who was going to be on the team next year, who we were going to try to get in the doors, to try to build a championship caliber program.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now you you started playing such an important role, which is
Yeah.
scouting and identifying the players. Now here I have a question. It's
Yeah.
obviously there are skills, but there are personalities or
Right.
attitude, right? So how those two plays a role in forming the player or bringing that player to the next level. So what
Yeah.
are the thought process really goes behind that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you've got to check the athletic boxes to even get a look. And, people may not like that, but like it's a $1 million business, right? Like you can't screw up and have a bad recruiting class, and you're going to be bad for 4 years after that.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
you had to check the athletic boxes, whether it's you have to be 6'1", 6'2" plus, you have to weigh a certain amount, you have to run a certain speed, you have to have certain mobility to you. But then the character also plays a factor into it. Like it's a college, you got to be able to get into school. Do you have good grades? Do you have you gotten into trouble recently? Are you a bad kid? Like, do you like do things you shouldn't do? Because if you do, then we probably can't bring you in, because if we do bring you in, you're going to be gone, and then we've wasted a spot.
That's right.
um so as important as all of the athletic profile stuff goes, the off the field stuff mattered just as much, to a degree, in the sense that, again, like if you're caught doing drugs and
Strict
drinking
no
and
no.
driving or whatever, you can't play football anymore on
Yeah,
our.
exactly, exactly. So, what is that one advice which you want to give to these uh, young athletes who are
Yeah.
basically pursuing any serious career in sports?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Treat it like a job. Like, okay, like, yes, you are of the upper echelon of athletes that can play at that level. Don't mess it up. Like, stay focused on academics, stay focused on making the right decisions, stay out of bad circles of friends that you shouldn't be a part of, because it can all be taken away from you just like that. And
Exactly,
there's
exactly.
nothing you can do to get back it unless you just do something crazy.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Because we saw quite a few cases, and the way things are changing so drastically, right?
Yeah.
It is very important to stay focused and to be surrounded by good friends, good company.
Yeah, and you see it all the time, man. There's all kinds of guys that, I grew up with, or I've seen around, that, they were really good at playing football. Like, they could have played at the next level at some point, but they made a decision or two that made it so they couldn't. And that's always really sad to see, because that's a lot of potential just wasted, right? And there's
Right. That's
equally,
right.
there's another kid out there that's wishing he could be you, and he would do all the right things, and you're blessed with a certain skill set, and you're screwing it up, and that sucks.
Exactly. So skills is not the everything. It is
Right.
basically that surrounding, and I think that's where I always uh, think that the friends who are around you, those really plays a very important role, because agree or don't agree, that they keep us grounded, right?
Right.
Good friends always keep us grounded. So yes, uh, so that's great. And then okay, so university is done. That was the transition happened from player to coach, and then quite a few things opened up, and then
Right.
you started your company, right? Or
Yeah.
that happened immediately, or there was something in between that?
So honestly, I was doing the recruiting and personnel stuff for about 3 years. Um, and at that point, kind of in year three, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be my full-time job. I'm doing everything possible. I'm networking with all the right people in order to, essentially kickstart a career into something that's pretty hard to get into. Um, and then, stuff started to kind of click for me. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this as much as I do, but I still want to try it out. Um, but in the meantime, COVID happens, the world shuts down.
Yeah,
That kind of screws up sports as you know it,
big
right?
time, big time.
Um, hard to be around people when you have to like be 6 feet apart at all times. You can't have stuff on your face, all that fun stuff. So that kind of brought everything to a halt. We were lucky enough to be able to play that season. But yeah, I was sitting in the office one day, I was working, we were complaining about some things that we were having to do that it was very tedious work. It's you know Googling online, trying to find, scores and stats for players that we were recruiting in order to be able to send them messages after their game. So kind of clicked one day. I'm like, why isn't there a software that does this? What's the deal? And that kind of got my gears going, so to speak. So I instantly, like, I got home, I called one of my buddies that was pretty involved with the entrepreneurship center at my university, and he's like, yeah, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Um, so started working with the entrepreneurship center on that idea. My buddy who I was coaching with at the time, he was also working on an idea. We hadn't talked about it. Um, and we kind of started, exchanging some ideas, and the platform that he was, kind of creating was had some similar ties to the one I was creating. So we ended up kind of working on it together. He had done a lot of the legwork as far as, really fleshing it out. And yeah, so we were two football coaches with no business background, and we were winning pitch competitions and all this other stuff all of a sudden. So things started to shift. And then that December, my buddy was going to go coach at another school. We knew that we had an idea that, we needed to go fundraise for and really launch. And I was presented with a really hard choice. So our director of player personnel had just left Mississippi State for another school, and I was offered his job. And I was like, wow, this is like
Amazing. That's
everything
great.
that I want, right? And I elected to go play startup instead. So I turned down the job, which at the time was really difficult decision. Um, Happy that I made it though. And yeah, I moved back in with my parents. I had no money. um, and yeah, I had to learn how to essentially be a COO of sorts. Go out and fundraise, find a developer to develop our application, all that fun stuff. And while I was doing that, I was also coaching high school football for fun. My high school football coach at the time, he was still at the school that I went to. I had free time in the afternoons. I was like, hey man, if you need an extra coach, let me know.
Let me
Uh,
know. I'm always available.
yeah, like I'll do it. You don't have to pay me. So yeah, I started coaching high school football, and developing the business in I was 20 early 2021.
That's amazing, actually. So now we were talking about a player, but now that player started a startup.
Yeah.
So
Wild.
that journey is quite amazing. And then that's I think that's how it needs to be. But then startup is a different ball game.
Right.
It's everything. Like you are doing everything.
Yeah.
you are you are
Literally.
literally you sweep the floor, you take care of everything, and you develop, you manage, and all that. So how you cope up with that, all the crazy things now which are happening in the startup world?
Yeah, it was like I was like learning an entire new world that I didn't know existed. I still had some support from the university and the entrepreneurship center there that cleared a lot of stuff up as far as like, hey, you should probably, make a pitch deck. That'd be a great start, or you should write a business plan. So yeah, really had to learn a lot on the fly. Ended up finding an angel group out of Mississippi to fund it. First pitch did not go well at all, but they were like, we can see we can see the idea, but ended up securing funding from that group in, I think it was June or so. Was able to bring our developer on full time, and we had a functional product by that season in August. So we weren't ready to launch. It was it was too early to really kick it off. So my co-founder, who was coaching at another university, and myself, who was coaching at a high school, were the two guys that were testing this thing out live in a football game, and trying to see if it worked. So that's
That's
kind of how I
amazing.
spent 2021.
No, but it's a different experience. It is I would say it is the best experience. I think more than the result, that process is so beautiful. There are sometimes highs and lows, but still,
Oh yeah,
it's the amazing journey.
yeah.
Uh,
And there were days where I was just like, why am I doing this? Like, uh, it's like you had said earlier, wearing all these different hats. There's all these problems that are coming up all over the place. You got to put out a fire every which way, every day, it felt like. And I'm just sitting here like, what are we doing? like,
I know
and I'm watching my
there
other
are some
friends,
days like that.
yeah, I'm watching other friends of mine. They're starting their, normal 9 to 5 jobs. They're loving life. They're making good money. And like I'm sitting here at my parents' house, like doing nothing and doing everything all at once.
Yeah, yeah. But I think this is maybe this is the cultural gap because I'm from India, and
Right,
it is very common to stay with parents. So
right.
my parents still stays with me. Obviously, right now I'm in Canada, they're in India, but it's very common, and I think it really acts as a very good support system, not in terms of financially, but in terms of sometimes we are low, and
Oh,
they are the one who really understand us. So without saying anything, they understand us quite a few things, and then that really help us to settle down, and that helps. And I think that is the biggest support, to have the supporting family around us, in addition
yeah.
to the friends, certainly.
No, 100%. And financials aside, A, it was great living rent free for a couple months. Um, B, my mom was always there to like be like, hey, keep going, you're gonna be all right. And then, I could lean on my dad in the sense that, my dad had, prior business experience, and, he could kind of be like, hey, are you doing this right? Are you doing this? So yeah, it was great. I was always, and still am, super grateful for that time, and in the sense that, they didn't have to let me come back, but they did do it, and they were really supportive, and still are supportive of everything today.
Yeah, no, moms and dads, they're great.
Yeah.
So okay, so then now you are continuing with the startup, and at the same time the coaching is also happening, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what means you can take a person out of sports, but you cannot take the sports out of person. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's always you wanted to be around it.
Yeah, and like I kind of knew I had to for two reasons. One, as far as our brand went, one of our slogans was, built by coaches for coaches. So it made sense to us to be coaching while we're developing this product and starting to push it out there, because like, hey, like you should use this software because I'll show you how to do everything that we do. And, we're increasing, our, or we're decreasing the time that we're spending on, certain manual tasks with it. Um, Other side of that was I knew I couldn't just play, businessman. I had to be out in the field. I had to be around other people. And, I'm very competitive. I wanted to have kind of an outlet for that as well. So yeah, coaching was awesome. Um, Good experience. It checked all the boxes that I needed to at the time.
Certainly, certainly, and I'm happy that you are enjoying that, both the words, startup and coaching. So
Yeah.
that feels good. Uh, but then what is next? Now, where you wanted to see that this journey is unfolding?
Yeah. So, got to coach 2 years at the high school that I graduated, while building the company, then transitioned to another school, that was a little bit further away. It was a new experience. That went really well. But my plate was starting to add up, and to the point where I'm overextending myself too much. So had to step away from coaching full time in November, and really kind of focus on some other things. But as far as what's going on next, we had another group step in and start helping us with the company, which has been great. Kind of allows us to not wear as many hats again. And yeah, it's scaling up really fast right now. We have a lot of, I don't know if I can talk about it yet, but we have a lot
I
of
was
very big
actually,
clients.
yeah, you can name your company. You can
Oh yeah, it's
about
called Answers AI. But we have a lot of big clients that it's all starting to kind of come to fruition at a good time. They're going to be using our software. It's kind of surreal, to be honest.
amazing,
Going from like something that two guys are talking about in my house to being like, oh, I've watched this team play on Sundays or Saturdays. I'm using our stuff.
That's
Uh,
great. That's great. And that is the thing. It feels really good when we see that others are using what we built. It is like our child, our brainchild, right? And seeing the
exactly.
results and becoming that tree. It's amazing. And
Yeah.
definitely, I wish you both of you a very best of luck in taking that company to a big.
I appreciate that, man. We're gonna need it.
All the luck for you, man. So now we are really coming at the uh, closure. But
Yeah,
uh, do you do you want to say anything, anything which is like out of your journey, which is to any other athletes, any other coaches, and do you want to say something to your parents as
I bet they'd love that. Um, yeah, I think, kind of the biggest lesson that I learned through, both playing and then kind of getting into coaching as well was, there's gonna be a lot of bad stuff that happens. But ultimately, if you stick with it, it's gonna end up really well, or going really well. Um, we kind of go, and it's very adjacent to how life goes, right? You're going to go through a lot of hiccups, but there's a lot of high moments as well. And I think sports in general does a great job at really kind of setting the tone for that. Um, as far as, my other thing is, I think people are really quick to kind of not throw in the towel on sports, but not want to be as active as they should be in it post, childhood. And I tell anybody that really has that passion after they're done playing, like stick with it somehow, whether it be, joining the local, you know, soccer team that, plays every Saturday, get into coaching if you feel kind of a drive to do that. But don't just, don't give up,
well? Don't give up. Don't give
and,
up.
and get rid of that passion, because it's a really hard passion to replace.
Agree.
Um,
Agree.
and
Totally.
yeah, like trying to find new hobbies for me is tough. I think I'm kind of in a transition period where, I'm not actively coaching. I'm kind of coaching like a little like flag team on the side. But it's not scratching the same itch that I had. So, people are like, oh, you should get into like rock climbing. Well, rock climbing doesn't score 28 points. That doesn't excite me.
That's true. That's true,
Uh,
man. It doesn't
but
give me that high.
Right, exactly. And so really just, stick with it as long as you can. My best friends were either guys that I played with, or guys that I've gotten to coach with, or met through coaching. I think it's the ultimate source of community. And that's really hard to replace and replicate.
Yeah. And to your parents, man.
Yeah. Oh, my parents. Yeah. Thank you guys for supporting me. Um, always grateful for telling me I was good even when I really wasn't. um my dad especially, he did not play football. It was not his thing. But he knows everything about it now, right? So he was always, really supportive behind my dreams and my aspirations, just like my mom was too. She was always there for me when, I got kicked down or had a bad time. And she's also there for me when things were going great and we were winning big and things were very exciting. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't have had the experience that I had if it wasn't for them, as well as the coaches that I had and worked with too.
That's so nice of you. And I think it is not that athlete's journey. It's always that in addition to athlete's journey, it is their parents, their coach's journey, and
Right.
they become such an important part of that journey. Uh, but again, AJ, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And we wish you a best of luck in your startup and in your lateral career as well. Really appreciate that, man. And definitely, we may be able to do another podcast at a different level of your journey.
Let's do it. I appreciate you
Okay.
having me on though. Love what you guys are doing. Think it's a really awesome, goal and mission that you guys have. So, appreciate you hearing me out. Let me tell a little couple things about myself.
Thank you so much. And thank you, our audience. So this is all about AJ and his journey, and we thank you all from you in sports. Once a sports person, always is a sports person. And if you want to unfold any stories, if you have any suggestion for us, please put those in a comment box. And if you think that your story is also fascinating, that needs to be covered, you can basically bring those as well. So and once again, thank you for staying along with us. And AJ, thank you. Take care, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, bye bye.